Hi, my name's Catherine from Crime Psych, and in this video I'm going to be giving a psychological analysis of Mick Philpott, who set fire to his house in 2012. In 2012, Mick Philpott and his wife Mairead set fire to their home in Derby, which killed 6 of their children. The pair, along with a friend called Paul Mosley, were convicted of manslaughter. There was a lot of press surrounding the case, as the pair had made a television appeal to catch the culprit. Mick Philpott had already been in the spotlight, as he'd appeared on a number of TV programmes, including Jeremy Kyle and I Widdicombe Versus, because of the lifestyle that he was leading. He had fathered 17 children by different women, and he lived with his wife and his mistress and had fathered children to both of them while living together. He'd also been under the criticism for relying on state benefits, and he was heavily criticised by the media for requesting a larger council house for his family, which included Mick, his wife Mairead, his mistress Lisa Willis, and 8 of their children. Mick and Mairead had met in 2000 when Mairead was a single 19-year-old mother who'd previously left a volatile relationship. In 2001, Mick Philpott met Lisa Willis, who was a 16-year-old single mother, and she became his mistress and was a bridesmaid at Mick and Mairead's wedding. However, in 2012, Lisa Willis had moved out and took her children to live with her sister and brother-in-law. She'd given birth to 4 children by Mick Philpott and took all of these children with her. Mick Philpott was born in 1956, and this means that he was 44 years old when he met 19-year-old Mairead and 45 years old when he met 16-year-old Lisa. Both of these were vulnerable young women, and they were likely to have been chosen due to their age and lack of life experience. And this shows how manipulative and cunning Mick Philpott was, beginning a relationship with Mairead, who was previously left a volatile relationship. He then moved on to an even younger and less worldly wise 16-year-old Lisa. He's very likely to have been extremely charming initially towards these young ladies, and they may have been flattered by the attention of an older man. Mick Philpott would have known that girls as young as these were much easier to control and to dominate. On the 11th of May 2012, the Philpott's family home was seriously damaged by fire during the early hours of the morning. The children, who were aged between 5 and 15 years old, were asleep upstairs and subsequently died from smoke inhalation. Following the fire, the local church and community supported the grieving parents, and funds were raised by the community to help and fund the children's funerals. Mick Philpott then called a press conference where they described the events of the fire. And if you haven't seen this emotional TV appeal, you should definitely go and watch it. I'll put a link to that YouTube video somewhere on here. It is an astonishing performance. He feigns upset and is handed a tissue, which he doesn't use to wipe away tears, but rather he just places it over his face. And suspicion was initially raised by several observers who observed that Mick Philpott wasn't behaving like somebody who just lost several children. He was behaving as though he was revelling in the attention of the public and the media, and this led to police bugging his hotel room and uncovering that Mick, Mairead and their friend Paul Mosley had indeed set the fire. It's no wonder that suspicion was arose, because he wasn't acting emotionally at all. He was quite calm. He feigns upset. He pretends to be upset. And anybody who's had children or sadly lost a child knows how emotional that is. Just sometimes reading about these type of incidents makes me as a parent become very upset. So when parents aren't behaving outwardly upset, it arises suspicion. And this led to the police, as I said, bugging the hotel room and uncovering through the conversations that they had that they were involved in setting the fire. Mick Philpott thrives on attention. He's an extremely manipulative person. This was evident before the fire with his various TV appearances. He did have a history of being violent and controlling and manipulative with women. When he was 21 years old, Mick Philpott attempted to murder his girlfriend, Kim Hill. She had sent him a letter saying that she was going to leave him. And this had enraged Mick Philpott, and so he'd stabbed her 12 times and punctured her lungs, her kidney and her bladder while she lay on her bed. He also stabbed Kim's mum, who came to her daughter's assistance and tried to help her. He had already been violent towards her on a number of occasions. On one occasion, he'd shot her in the groin with a crossbow for wearing a dress that he thought was too short for her to go out in. And on another occasion, he'd cracked her kneecap with a hammer for paying too much attention to a baby that she was looking after. This type of behaviour suggests that he's very possessive. He wants and needs to be the centre of attention, and when he feels he's not getting his own way, he acts somewhat like a toddler and throws a tantrum to get his own way, to get that attention. He'd acted as though Kim was some kind of a possession of his, and he was incredibly angry at the thought that she might leave him. And rather than suffer the indignation of her leaving, he decided to stab her. He was convicted of that crime and he received a 7-year sentence for it. However, in the UK, it's normal for prisoners to spend half of their sentence in jail and the other half out of jail on remand. Therefore, he only actually served 3 years and 2 months behind bars for that stabbing. Mick Philpott then married Pamela Lomax and they had 3 children together. Pamela described Mick as being very controlling throughout their relationship. Mick then went on to have a relationship with a 14-year-old Heather Kehoe when he was aged 37. As soon as she turned 16, she ran away from her parents to live with him. And again, this shows how manipulative he was with women. As a young girl, she was no doubt flattered by the attention of an older man. While he was courting her, or more accurately, while he was grooming her, he would most likely have been quite charming and kind initially to draw her in. The pair had 2 children together who were both boys, and Heather tells of how Mick had beaten her up because he wanted a daughter. She said that he would encourage her sons to be violent towards her. Now, Mick Philpott clearly didn't see violence towards women as being such a bad thing. It's almost as though it was justified and okay. He would control and manipulate them when they didn't do as he wanted or didn't do as he pleased. And this combined with the charm and behaviour he used to draw these young women to him is characteristic of a narcissist. In 1991, he was given a conditional discharge from the British Army for assault after he had headbutted a colleague. And this just shows the contempt that he has towards other people in general. He habitually uses violence towards other people. In fact, 1 week before the fire, he'd attended a court hearing about a road rage incident where he'd punched another driver. He'd pleaded guilty to common assault, but he denied the dangerous driving. At the hearing, Mick Philpott was bailed and he was awaiting trial. In 2010, Mick Philpott had received a police caution for slapping Mairead and dragging her outside by her hair. And Glenn Wilson, a psychologist, has described Mick Philpott as being a psychopath and an exhibitionist with antisocial personality disorder. There is no clinically recognised disorder for psychopathy. However, psychopaths are considered to have an extreme form of antisocial personality disorder. There had been a court hearing scheduled for the morning of the fire between Lisa Willis and Mick Philpott regarding the custody of the 4 children that she took away with her. 2 days after the fire, police had discovered petrol had been found inside the letterbox of their home, and as a result, the murder investigation was set up and began. And Lisa Willis and her brother-in-law were initially arrested over the offence. However, they weren't charged and were later arrested. Mick and Mairead were arrested for murder on the 28th of May 2012. As I said, petrol had been found inside the letterbox of their home and the petrol container and glove had been found near their house. The pair were arrested on suspicion as they weren't acting like grieving parents, and as I've already mentioned, this led to their hotel room being bugged by the police, which revealed the pair's involvement. Forensic investigations later on discovered that the clothes of the Philpotts and Mosley did have petrol on them, so this confirmed it. The 3 people were initially charged with murder, which was then downgraded to manslaughter. And this was because the authorities believed that they hadn't intended to actually kill their children when they set the fire. There was a custody hearing scheduled shortly after the fire where Mick was going to fight Lisa for custody of their children. And she had been a really good mother to them, and she'd removed them from the overcrowding house. And so Mick Philpott knew there was very little chance of being awarded custody. Being the controlling, deceitful, manipulative psychopath that he is, he had lit the fire in a plan to frame Lisa and get the children. He didn't actually want the children because he loved them. He wanted them for the money that they brought. Mairead had appealed the length of her sentence. She'd claimed that she'd been forced to take part in the actions by her husband. This appeal was dismissed by the judge. However, when you consider Mick Philpott's previous behaviours, it's clear that he is very controlling, very manipulative, and uses violence on a regular basis. It's likely that she felt that she didn't have a choice in taking part. However, the judge decided that the length of her sentence was appropriate for her part in it. I do hope that you've learned something about the psychology behind Mick Philpott's actions and how he could have gone on to kill 6 innocent children. He'd been manipulative, controlling and violent towards women throughout his life, and this control and manipulation led to 6 innocent children needlessly losing their lives. Thank you so much for taking this time to watch this video. I do hope that you found it interesting. Bye for now.